The United Nations top official on human rights says inaction by the United Nations is emboldening the Syrian government in its violent crackdown on opposition activists. Navi Pillay says that the UN's failure to agree on action has encouraged the regime to use overwhelming force. Activists say that at least 36 people have been killed today as the security forces continue their military campaign in towns and cities across the country. But the Syrian government denies using bombs and artillery against its own people.
The government is dealing very softly with them. We don't want to harm innocent civilians. We don't want to behave like these terrorist groups are behaving. That's why the real losses are on the part of the government.
But the UN says more than 5,000 people have been killed by security forces since last March, and attempts to find a diplomatic solution have gone nowhere. Foreign Secretary William Hague has backed an Arab League plan for a joint Arab-UN peacekeeping mission, although he made it clear that Western troops would not be involved. However, it's been flatly rejected by Syria. Russia, which vetoed the UN Security Council resolution last week, says it's studying the plan, but that peacekeepers should not be sent until there is a ceasefire. Well, Navi Pillay, the UN Commissioner on Human Rights, joins us now from the UN in New York. Navi Pillay, what access, if any at all, has anybody from your office had to the what we call the war zone?
My office has not had direct access in Syria, nor has the Independent Commission of Inquiry. We are receiving information, though, from witnesses inside Syria. My office furnishes reports on the human rights situation of every country in the Human Rights Council, and therefore we have established these contacts and networks with civil society. Most of the information gathered by the commissions of inquiry are from people outside the borders, such as defectors of the security forces.
But have you personally asked to go, and have you been rejected?
Yes, I have asked numerous times, because that was the first resolution passed by the Human Rights Council asking me to file a report on what's going on. And this is in March last year.
Now, you said in your speech today, inside the General Assembly, you said that at this stage the regime was almost certainly guilty of war crimes, and that it should be referred to the International Criminal Court. I'm just wondering whether that is going to be productive, given what's happened in Sudan, where you went the same track and nothing really has happened.
Well, it is my mandate in covering the protection and promotion of all people, of all human rights, that I make these calls when I find that there have been very serious crimes committed on a widespread and systematic scale, and that it couldn't happen without the approval or even the complicity of those at the highest levels of authority. And so all these norms and standards are created by the United Nations, and so it falls upon the United Nations to act when there's a call made to act.
There seems to be no question whatever from everybody who's been there to observe that the regime is killing its own people. But I'm wondering what reports you're getting of what violations against human rights may be being perpetrated by the other side, and indeed what analysis you've made of outside interference on the rebel side.
I think these can be better examined if one is on the ground, and the Commission of Inquiry has asked for access to investigate just these allegations. They were not able to do so, but I have placed on record the report issued by the Syrian government that they have lost 2,000 security officers in the violence.
Well, Ms. Pillay, could I just press you on one thing, and that is that you've made calls before for action against governments that kill their civilians, most specifically in Sri Lanka, where the allegation is the deaths of 40,000 civilians, and again, nothing has happened.
I will continue to make these calls for action. I don't think these very serious human rights violations should be forgotten and swept under the carpet. There has to be accountability. My call right now is for the violence to stop. These are the nature of the calls I made with regard to Sri Lanka. Lives would have been changed if the international community acted. Instead, all kinds of national and regional interests seem to emerge and cloud the minds of member states on their clear duty to protect the lives of civilians.
Navi Pillay, thank you very much indeed for joining us from the United Nations. Kathy.